Nostalgia, such a layered running emotion. That experience of having what you lost or never had, of a band that's split up before you could see them, of seeing a band in a venue that's now a bunch of this could be anywhere apartments, of lovers long lost, of finding yourself. Then there's the nostalgia for the present, knowing that it won't last forever, and then there's the future nostalgia where we perhaps blend our past experiences and project them into the future. I'm just going to read out some lyrics from a song by one of my favorite bands, the Buzzcocks, which is called Serendipitously Nostalgia. About the future, I can only reminisce, for what I've had is what I'll never get. And although this may sound strange, my future and my past are presently disarranged, and I'm surfing on a wave of nostalgia for an age yet to come. And it's wild when you try to, sort of get your head around that. I mentioned this because my guest today has been heavily influenced by 70s and 80s pop, and has brought this this sort of period into the present with his debut EP Deja Vu, which is a magical, romantic, and yes, futuristically nostalgic dream pop record. And I'm delighted to welcome Jason Kwan to the show. Jason, thanks so much. It's really great to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's honestly a pleasure to be here.
Brilliant. So, I mean, because I'm getting to an age, before I forget, let's talk about nostalgia for a little bit, and what that sort of means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just hearing you read that first bit was really interesting because so much of the process of me writing Deja Vu was based off of nostalgia, and even Deja Vu itself as a concept is kind of intriguing. Like
it is,
to
isn't it?
feel like you've experienced something before, yet you're actually experiencing it for the first time because you're in the present moment. And I really wanted to play into capturing that feeling, but I wanted to give people the opportunity to indulge in it and to embrace it over and over again. And I think often we chase excitement in our lives, but sometimes the most exciting thing is to experience something very comforting once again.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to capture those moments. And for me, nostalgia, when I was writing the EP, I was kind of thinking, this is crazy that this is my debut EP. I feel like I've been doing this for a while, but I've yet to be, have the opportunity to produce a full project. And the ideas of yearning for nostalgia really came up to the surface for me. And I think this is an EP that couldn't have been written when I first experienced those stories for the first time. It had to be written, years later after I've been able to digest it and kind of brave those moments again for me to be able to write them. And so it kind of feels like this record is, something that I would have done 10 years ago, but I just couldn't have. And so the Deja Vu is kind of me being like, I am experiencing these experiences again by thinking about them, by writing poetry, by, indulging in my journals that I used to write when I was younger, and being able to pull out those feelings which made those memories such core memories to me, but be able to reinterpret them in a way that still brings me something exciting and new today. And I really hope that, things like falling in love for the first time, that people can experience that over and over again, because we absolutely can. It's just about letting yourself understand that nostalgia is past, present, and future.
Yeah, because I guess the default when you think about nostalgia is the past.
Yeah.
We get kind of nostalgic, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether I think nostalgia can be a good thing, a sort of positive thing. I think sometimes it does have connotations of that can be negative, sort of, bad experiences, but also, like you say, those sort of experiences of, when you, perhaps like I said in the intro, perhaps when you have your first crush when you're young, and that when you fall for somebody but it's not reciprocated, or a time and a place that, and music is great for this, isn't it? Taking you back to to a certain time. It's such a multifaceted thing, isn't it? Nostalgia. I was trying to think of a good word for it, but I just came out with thing. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so layered.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, nostalgia was also a way for me to get some closure on some experiences
Mm,
that I've had
mm,
and that have it almost felt like writing this EP kind of clarified how I feel about a lot of things that happened to me and
yeah.
me accepting that like this is part of my story and that I don't have to change anything about it to make me
Mm,
feel better about anything. I wrote this EP about me growing up in Hong Kong, between the Hong Kong and the UK,
yeah.
as a teenager, as a queer person, as
Mm,
someone who was, who had left home at 14 and who was
mm,
experiencing things by themselves. And I think the nostalgia comes from like me almost being like, wow, I can't believe I did all that. Sometimes I forget that like that was
yeah.
a big part of my life, but sometimes also I feel like that's too big a part of my life, and I need to move on and keep moving forward and looking ahead. And like life isn't just about how you grew up. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes people get really attached to like, oh yeah, I had this and this trauma growing up, and this would happen to me, so this is how it made me who I am today. And I felt like with this EP, I was able to say, yes, all this happened, but I'm in control. I'm the one telling the story. I'm the one singing this on stage. And there's also
Mm,
something quite poignant about, when I had these experiences, I was completely in the closet, right? Like I
mm,
never ever thought that I would be on a tour singing these songs to people who
yeah.
would recognize that I was a queer, non-binary person,
Mm,
singing about being just that.
yeah.
Like for me, that was crazy to even think about because I was so scared of anyone ever finding out I was queer. So
Mm,
the nostalgia is also like giving myself a hug, being like, no, it's great that you got to experience all those things. And yes, it might have been these darker circumstances where you're in the closet, but don't forget that you fell in love. Don't forget that you experienced joy. Don't forget that you had these incredible adventures. And so I
mm,
wanted, so even though the EP for me, like, is like exploring kind of darker themes, like it's very celebratory, it's very dreamlike, it's very expressive, and I wanted it
yeah.
to feel joyful and not feel like, oh wow, I've had such a difficult past and I can't move on. It's like, no, like I can still find the joy in the difficult moments. And I think that was hard to reconcile, I think, when I was thinking about putting the sound together.
Do you think that there's been a period when you were saying that you couldn't have written this, I don't
Mm,
know, like 10 years ago, for example, that there's
yeah.
this, that, what you've been doing since then has been a sort of period of self acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when I first ever started writing music, I was probably like, I think 6 or 7, when I
Wow.
properly put
Yeah.
pen to paper and
Yeah.
wrote songs on the piano. And all the songs I wrote were about escaping, about
Wow.
running away. And
Mm,
then when I grew older, it was songs to channel anger. It's very specific, and like the first few songs I put out are very glam rock inspired,
mm,
and they have this energy of just like screaming and shouting, right? Like I just want to channel my anger through that, and
yeah.
music has always helped me channel really dark feelings.
Mm,
Those songs, to be honest, like I could have never released them and still found them extremely cathartic. Like they are songs I would come home and play on piano and sing if I had a bad day or something's been really
mm,
stressful. The same way I think people go on a run or like exercise or journal or do or meditate. Like that was my way of relieving those
yeah.
type of emotions. Like I've always struggled with anger. Um, so to then write this EP, which is so in a way not angry and very
Mm,
embracing and
absolutely.
celebratory, has felt so nice. And I think I was too angry back in the day to be able to write this EP, to be able to see the good in things. I was too angry at the world. I was too angry at my situation. But now that I feel like I've been able to take control of my life and find out how to channel those negative feelings,
Yeah.
I found like I've almost like blown off all the dust and found the jewels that were hidden inside those
Mm.
experiences. So it's yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It sounds like it has. I mean, it's interesting how those opposites can exist together. You sort of have the anger, but you've worked out a way I guess sort of celebrate the way that you're dealing with that,
Hmm.
and that you're not allowing it to be, the dominant part of your life. Would that be fair to say?
I think so because I don't think people would say I'm an angry person,
No,
but as a kid, I definitely was a very
you
angry
definitely
kid.
was. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a way of me being able to manage my emotions. And I think music is like, I think to like non-music makers, it might sound a bit cheesy, but like it absolutely is such a vehicle for me to like just let out a big sigh, but
Yeah.
through musical notes and
Yeah.
chords, right? Um, so I don't know like what the future holds in terms of like me returning to channeling anger through music. Um, I think my relationship with that is so different now. I feel so much more in control of how I process anger.
Mm,
But there are a lot of songs from that period that I've not released because they're just so raw. I
yeah.
don't know if it can actually be filtered into something that people want to listen to
Mm,
because now like I've started to factor that in as well. But I think it'll be interesting for me to just put it out for no real commercial reason, but just
yeah.
as an experience.
I totally hear you with that. I mean,
Mm.
I mean, I think that, I mean, music is like, it's such a powerful medium for portraying those, what you're feeling, and the fact that when when I listen to music and when other people listen to music, that they can relate to that, and kind of like hear the, whatever it is that your inputs into that, and then take, perhaps they may not feel exactly the same, but they can relate to what they're hearing and what they're feeling from it. I think it's such a universal, more than, perhaps more than art, more than poetry, which they're totally sort of creative mediums. But music is almost like the all encompassing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like with comparing my newer stuff to my older style as well, my
Mm,
older style was quite specific.
yeah,
I would really hone in on specific things that I was feeling. It was almost like I was just exasperated and just saying things
mm,
um, because I needed to get it out. And it was way more lyrical, way more intense. There were almost too many hidden meanings for someone external to
right,
understand exactly what
yeah,
I was saying. But I didn't care. I didn't write that for
mm,
anyone else. But moving into this EP, I really wanted to explore a new genre that I've not written in before necessarily, which was pop music. And I know it
mm,
sounds simple, but I think pop music is one of the most difficult genres to
yeah,
get right.
yeah,
And, I wanted to write music where someone could also place their narrative into it and interpret it in a way where I and the song are just a vehicle for their emotions. But at the same
yeah,
time, I can also be giving my point of view. And, a songwriter I think who does this insanely well, two that come to mind is like Carole King
mm,
and Carly Rae Jepsen.
yeah.
Two completely different periods of
Different periods, yeah,
pop
yeah,
songwriters, but
yeah,
like Carly Rae is so, so good at
mm,
building a song for you to put yourself as a main character. And I
mm,
think I was trying to bridge the gap between my glam rock stuff with my indie pop stuff to be like, how can I share this experience with someone and make it a bit more universal while
mm,
also not losing the unique story that inspired this song? So I had a really good time working within this framework.
mm.
Um, yeah.
So, I mean, going back to your childhood, I mean, we don't have to go into sort of details of it, but um, I'm always interested in, you, for one thing, you said that, you'd always been angry, but
Mm.
I'm always interested in the things that we remember from childhood. For example, like I lost my, both my parents a couple of years ago, within sort of 8 months of each other, and and for a couple of years before that, I'd been, you start to, you know what's coming, that the end's probably not far away, and you start to think about your relation. I did anyway. Start to think about my relationship with my parents, and things that I really remember. And of course, there were some good things, and then there were be trivial things, but they stick with you. You
Yeah.
know, for example, like, you know, I think I was probably about 8 years old, and I was, you know, I was out playing with my friends in the fields at the back of the house that I grew up in. And, you know, I wanted to sort of come in, you know, it was time to come in. We were playing football, I think, and, you know, I it was my ball. I wanted to take it in, you know, and I did.
Mm.
So anyway, my friend went back to his parents and said that I told him to fuck off, and I
Mm.
hadn't. His mum went to my dad, and the upshot is that my dad called me upstairs. He didn't believe me.
Mm.
He believed what he'd been told,
Mhm.
and that stayed with me through my
Yeah.
life. And it's caused me sort of issues of trust. So when people, if I say something to somebody and people don't believe me, that that gets at me. It
Yeah.
still does. So many years later, you know, so
Yeah, of course.
I'm just an interest. I just think those kind of things form who we become.
Yeah, absolutely. I think trust is such a big feeling as well because you inherently trust your parents as your
Mm,
caretakers and for them
mm,
to and kind of sometimes like all you have is your word,
yeah,
right? And like
yeah,
I know that's a saying and stuff, but like if someone doesn't believe your word, it's very hard to feel like you stay connected to them
yeah.
on a very pure level of honesty. Um, I mean, I have struggled a lot with my parents with that as well
Mm,
because I'm not the kid that my parents thought they were gonna have. Let's put it
yeah.
that way.
Mm, mm,
They had very they had a dream for me, but according to them, and
yeah.
my parents are both working class. They grew up working class, and they wanted me to have the best. They wanted me to experience the best things in this world, and they worked really, really hard, and they still do
Yeah.
for our family, to experience that. But I think sometimes that expectation is quite damaging.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
coming when I came out to them, I very much wanted to. I had felt that our relationship had lost the trust, and so I thought, well, if I'm more honest with them, maybe that
Yeah.
would help us, strengthen this. And so it didn't work. It kind of backfired, and it's been a lot of years of me trying to reconcile my relationship with my parents, just because I
Mm,
told them I was queer.
yeah.
But then also like pursuing music, you know, is something that is so wild and alien to them that
Mm,
they struggle to understand the world that I'm walking into. And I also find it hard to communicate with them exactly what's going on, like even if I told them, I'm going on a podcast, they don't fully understand what that means.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't understand the mediums that we engage in the modern day. And also like there's a language barrier. I grew up
Yeah.
speaking Cantonese and Mandarin, and English, but my parents, my mom, her English isn't, it's not bad, but it's not incredible. So,
Mm,
she cannot fully critically break down things that I say,
right.
unless if I bring it to a level where she would understand. And so there is sometimes a gap with that. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of me as an angry kid trying to express myself has felt stifled because I've not been able to just say how
Yeah.
I feel to them and have them accept it. It's always been I've had to prove something to
I
them.
I totally hear you with that. I
Mm,
totally hear you with that. I mean, I think to some degree, you know, I had a similar sort of experience. It was like my parents didn't really talk about, you know, their emotions, how they were feeling.
mm,
And I it was only later in their life when I worked out that the dynamic between my mum and dad, between those two people who, like you say, you know, you know, are there as your protectors, that their relationship was something that I didn't fully understand as
mm.
well. You know, so they have their own kind of issues that they're kind of going through, which perhaps inhibit how they would ordinarily sort of sort of speak to me or treat me. So I found it similar, that I found it difficult to communicate at an emotional level.
Hmm.
You know, sometimes sort of factually, you know, with like my dad and me would sort of talk about politics and things like
Mhm.
that. My mum never, because she was just not that sort of person. But my dad, we
Mhm.
would do. But talk about an emotional level, I was kind of, and as an only child, I was kind of like on my
Mm.
own, you know.
Interesting. Yeah, I am a songwriter. I like
Mm,
by nature, I am so emotional.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like I'm also a Cancer,
Mm,
horoscope wise, and I don't really read too much into it, but I think it's funny that the thing that's associated with cancers is this like water sign, deeply emotional, always,
mm,
very expressive. But um, yeah, I've always used poetry, music, and
yeah,
writing and singing and performing as my way of communicating, and that was something that was nurtured by my mom. Um, so that's why when I wanted to make music, for me it felt like a break of trust for her to be like, "Oh, I don't want you to be a musician. I just want you to be good at it."
mm,
And so there's something felt very disingenuine of like, oh, so it's just a technical skill that you wanted me to have. You didn't want me
yeah,
to actually, you know, embody the ethos and the lifestyle of expressing myself creatively in this world,
yeah.
and spend most of my time doing it. So I think there was a disconnect for me in that way as well.
What what did they want you to do?
Oh, like absolute stereotype. They wanted me to be a lawyer,
Mm, yeah,
and for them it was like stable income.
yeah,
You can just work hard and get the job done and you'll be fine. um and for me, I did do a lot of internships in law. I had
mm,
planned to do the conversion course, but even when I went to university, I remember I wanted to study English literature
yeah,
instead of doing law, and my English teachers at school had to write to my parents to explain to them why this is a valuable degree to have. And the way I convinced my parents to let me do it was to say that I would do a conversion course after my English degree,
mm,
because that was an easy way into doing a GDL, into a law degree. And
yeah,
obviously I did the English degree and then moved to London and started making music,
yeah,
because I was just like, English was the most creative academic subject that I was good at,
yeah,
and I loved reading. I loved poetry, and so in a way, I tried pushing, like extending this facade of me being a lawyer for as long as
I
possible
hear
before
you.
I actually just like moved to London. And it was quite a critical point when I did, because it marked me actively telling my parents, no, I'm not going to live the life you want me to live.
Yeah,
And I will fund everything and be
mm,
financially independent and do this thing on my own terms, because that's how important it is to me
yeah,
to do this. I'm gonna spend my whole life dedicated to this, even if it means, I think at the peak of my hustling, I had 7 or 8 jobs,
yeah,
and it was just like I had to keep going, right? Like I had, like for me, that was all I wanted to do, which is why this debut EP, took a while, because music is so expensive to produce, and
yeah, yeah,
I didn't have a silver spoon or a golden check to give me that opportunity to just write and sit in a studio
mm,
and use my time to write instead of working. And so I'm very, very proud of the project that's come out of it, but it feels like it's been a real long time in the making. And that's why the theme of nostalgia comes in, because I feel like, would I have written this last year, the year before that? Actually, no, like this, writing it now has encompassed that whole journey of me moving to London, me growing up, and me becoming who I am today. So it's, and I do
mm,
feel with this EP as well, as like I've just dipped my toe in. I've not
yeah.
fully like jumped into the water yet. So it's been an interesting change.
I've got so much respect for you for, for all of the all that you've just said. You know, I'm just thinking about myself. Like my parents, particularly my dad, was sort of more vocal about it, but then my mum was saying
Mm,
things behind the scenes. I don't know, but the same thing. But I think it was probably my dad, because he had a childhood, and again, this is stuff that I didn't really realize at the time, or I didn't know until he properly told me. He had a very difficult childhood. They
mm,
had no money whatsoever, none.
mm,
They were his parents and my grandparents used to fight, and he would be he had a very unstable. They were moving from house to house, as his parents were fighting, and he didn't have any money. And he educated himself, so he became he qualified as a chartered mechanical engineer. So
Mm.
for him, when I came along, it was the same thing that your parents had. It was about
Yeah.
safety and security because that's what he didn't have in his childhood. And at the time, I was why, and but I didn't know really his sort of backstory.
Yeah.
And but the respect I have for you is you making that decision and doing what instinctively you knew that you wanted to do. I didn't do that, and
Mm.
I think it's an incredible thing to do. It sounds easy, but it's not.
Yeah, and you know what? Like sometimes I think back and I'm like, how did I do that? But it wasn't even like I was so brave that I was like, I'm gonna decide to do this. I do feel like there were moments in my life where I felt like that was my only option,
Mm,
right? Like it wasn't like, wow, I have all these incredible opportunities. It's like, no, like I actually feel like I don't have a lot of opportunities. So I
mm,
need to go out and make some for myself. It
yeah,
felt more like that. It was more like a survival thing because
yeah,
when I moved to the UK when I was 14,
mm,
the big reason, like there were a few reasons behind that, and one of them was because I was being bullied so badly at my old school for being too camp, too queer, too musical theater. Also, like growing up in Hong Kong, as at the time I was like maybe I'm gay. That was really difficult with all the
yeah,
expectations placed upon me, and you
mm,
know, people say that Hong Kong's more progressive in terms of LGBT rights, but it isn't.
mm,
And in comparison with the Western world, like you can't really have a lifestyle
yeah,
out there as a queer person. You can be out, sure, but it will affect you negatively, and you are taught that very early on. And probably the biggest catalyst in me deciding to leave Hong Kong is when Leslie Chung, who's a huge cancer pop star, and
mm,
kind of like I like the Michael Jackson, Madonna type
mm,
character in Asia, um, who came out as queer, was super gender fluid on stage,
yeah,
who had publicly had a boyfriend, but
yeah,
also was every dad's favorite singer, every mom's favorite singer,
yeah,
every musician's favorite artist. He committed suicide because it was
mm,
too much, and people had such an issue with his sexuality. And I remember seeing that at the age of like 9 or something, and being like, I want to be him, but I can't. Like, I
yeah,
literally have seen news articles of him ending his life because of this. So at that point, I remember saying to myself, I need to get out.
yeah,
As a 9-year-old, I
yeah,
was like, I need to get out. So I remember saying to my parents, like, I want to go abroad. And my parents were like, we can't afford to do that, you know? And so I auditioned for music scholarship.
mm, mm,
And I wouldn't say that I'm the best pianist or the best singer, even, but you could really tell that I remember those auditions. I was so determined. Like, I fully gave them everything I had. I was at the time performing as a chorus in the cast of Annie as like a 10-year
mm,
old, and I
yeah,
sang a number from there, and I did a classical French song as well because I thought I'd give them range. And to be honest, I think they picked me because they liked my audacity more than anything. Um, but it gave me the financial means to go because I got the scholarship. I got a hardship fund. I mean, I failed the maths exam and I had to retake it the next year because my grades were so bad. But I managed to find a way to get out. And I
and get
moved to
there.
a
Yeah,
country that I had never been to before
wow,
by myself, not knowing
wow,
what's going to happen. I went to an all boys school and just, yeah, like I thought for me, that's not bravery. It's almost like me being very stubborn and being stupid
yeah,
almost. And me being like, I need to survive. I need to get out of this. I can't have people, physically bullying me. I need to get out.
absolutely.
So I think
Yeah,
it was like a
yeah,
desperation.
mm.
Um, and so I think moving to London was the easy part after university because I had already moved to the UK. That was the hard part. Um,
So moving to the UK was what round about what 2008?
2008. Yeah.
2008, right? Okay, yeah,
Yeah. And so it was a huge turning point in my life because I felt like, oh, I can work hard and secure opportunities for myself and not rely on my parents to
mm,
provide me with things. And So I remember from then on, I started to study really hard, and I got really, really good grades because I
Yeah.
was determined to build the strongest foundation I could. And although I didn't make loads of friends at school because I was still bullied for being gay, I spent all of my time in the music rooms,
Yeah.
practicing, rehearsing, listening to music. I remember like I would sit down and just put my head down and play like Cher's discography from her first album to the end
Mm.
and just pick my favorite, put into a playlist, move on to the next artist. Like I was doing my homework of like and exploring these incredible musical worlds for the
Yeah.
first time. So
Yeah.
like I really like that moment of my life. I have written songs in that period where it's all about like, my life feeling like it's on pause, but I will press play with all of this new knowledge and excitement and skill when I'm able to just be myself. And that was when I was at uni. So
Mm.
it it is weird to I haven't reflected on this in ages. So it's quite interesting to like think about that now.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's really interesting to think of, of the, the, y the importance of your environment, the trauma, the difficulties and the trauma they had, still getting bullied, so you still got that going on. But there was something else that inspired you to give you that determination,
Mm,
to say this is what I'm gonna do.
yeah. And then to be honest, like even at 14, I didn't know what I was gonna do. Right. Like
Yeah.
it's I was like, oh, I'll study hard, get my GCSEs done. That was all I was thinking about. But at the same time,
Mm,
I was also, that was the first real time I had access to listening to music for
to
myself, if that
music.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I started to fall in love with, and it was the first year that Lady Gaga came out.
Mm,
And it was such a big moment for me because there was an
yeah,
artist whose whole ethos is work hard and you'll find your dreams, right?
yeah,
So that
yeah,
obviously connected
yeah.
with me, especially coming out as a queer person.
Mm,
Also, like her obsession with classical music, with jazz, with playing piano and singing. Those are all
yeah,
things that I was obsessed with as well.
yeah,
And I also give huge credit to my music teachers, like Arlene Rolfe, who was my vocal teacher. She sung with the Scottish National Opera, and she nurtured my love for musical theater, for jazz, for classical, and I trained in operatic singing.
yeah.
And
Wow.
and then my piano teachers, I had jazz piano lessons, I had classical piano lessons, I learned to double bass for the first time. Like I got such a privileged
Yeah.
experience in music because I got this scholarship based off of someone who was like, this kid's got some audacity, let's give him a shot. So like if I didn't get that, I probably wouldn't have been able to explore music as deeply as I was able to. But it really made me fall in love with, the main thing is playing and accompanying myself with the
Yeah.
piano and writing songs. Like that was my favorite thing that came out of the entire experience. And on weekends, it's because of boarding house, all the kids would go back home or go party with their friends. I didn't have friends, so I went to the music room and I played music, and I had the best time. Like I
Wow.
didn't even feel sad about it, because I just really, really enjoyed working on my craft in that
Yeah.
sense. Yeah,
That's
and I
incredible.
miss having that time and privilege of just being at school and just playing music and listening to music with my eyes closed. Um, because I feel like everything's so hectic now, and people receive information so differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. To anybody that's listening, audacity. That's what you need. That's what you need for success in life. It's amazing.
And
That's really
honestly, like
incredible.
I feel like I've lost that type of fearlessness
Do you?
as you grow older. Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
I I kind of miss how I cared so little about how I came off, but I cared so much about what I wanted.
Mm.
And I've been trying to reclaim that side of me every time I go on stage and every time I sit and write music. I'm like, let's just go for it. What's the worst that could
S-
happen?
This is really interesting. This sort of fearlessness and
Mm,
taking risks, and why why we lose that. That you're right. As kids in the sort of the as we just grow, our first sort of social interactions.
mm,
We have that. There is that sort of fearlessness, apart from perhaps some instincts that take us away from dangerous situations,
yeah.
things that we know instinctively are dangerous. But in terms of what we do, what games we play.
Hmm.
When you're a kid, it's like, who cares? Nobody
Exactly.
cares. But then
Nobody cares.
then you're right that as we get older, yes, that there's some. It's not even doubt, is it? I mean, doubt's a separate thing, isn't it? But just I don't know what it is. What do you feel that's part of it that you've lost? Is it the or what is it that's
Mm.
inhibiting you from being as fearless as you were, kind of 15 years ago?
It is. I mean, just like I guess the opposite of fearless is fearful. I am
Fearful,
fearful.
yeah,
Yeah, and I also I really think it is me who's like holding myself back, and I have the full
mm,
power to not. And with every session I do and every lyric I write, I'm trying to unlock that again.
yeah,
So when I was actually thinking about the imagery for the EP and what stories have inspired me, I
yeah,
went back to the story that I grew up with, and it's this book by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, but it's called The Little Prince.
mm,
And The Little Prince is this really cute little story about how this prince, who's a child, lives in space, and shows us as adults how you've lost joy and imagination and how you
yeah,
care about judgment and things like that. And that imagery I put on my EP cover, and I filmed a
yeah,
Paradise music video in accordance because that is the feeling that I'm still battling with of like, how can I re-engage my imagination? How can I re-engage that fearlessness as a kid? Which is the whole point of the story of Little Prince. And so I don't know if I'll ever fully be able to recapture that, and
mm.
I might not need to, but I'm definitely very inspired by that version of myself. Yeah,
Is do you with the music that you're creating? Do you? I'm just trying to think. Do you worry about what people will think about it?
absolutely,
You do, yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Initially, I just when I put out songs like "Sometimes I Cry" and
Mm,
"Seduction" and "Give Me Up to Love," not really. I cared more about being able to pay my rent. Right.
yeah, yeah,
Those songs didn't do that for me.
mm,
And I started to think, well, I really want to make pop music. That is my
yeah,
true love of genre. I want to explore pop music. And so when I put out Ritual and I started working with Michelangelo, that really changed how I saw myself as an artist and how I saw the world see me as an artist.
yeah,
Because before that, I was just doing things for fun, not
yeah.
purely for fun, but like I was making art that I just wanted to do. Whereas
Interesting.
now
Yeah,
it's hard to balance the fact that I know that people will listen to this stuff if I put it out,
I
and I
hear
want
you.
them to. Um, and so it is a gentle balance, and this EP definitely swings more towards um, a side of me that I feel very comfortable to share with people,
Yeah,
which is why I feel like I've just dipped my toe in. And the music I am creating, so the EP coming after or the album coming after, for me is like, okay, I've given you like a little taste of it. I'm gonna like
mm,
really pull you into it now and see if you enjoy it. So this is for me a gateway teaser drug for you to enter the universe. But by no means do I think I've like watered down these songs. I think I've, if anything, put even more thought into them to make sure that
yeah,
you will give them a listen. And with the imagery, I wanted to do something very striking and something very memorable. And I'm quite obsessed with magical realism.
mm,
Just like being able to incorporate magic as if it was real, because I think
yeah,
that's how we should see the world and see ourselves and see our imagination. It is quite a magical thing to have.
yeah,
It's this machine that will create anything you want if you allow it to.
yeah.
So so we'll see.
I completely agree with you. I think imagination is a wonderful thing, and
Mm,
it's something that we I think we need to try and nurture it and develop it like it's a muscle, and sort of work
yeah.
at it because it's there's a danger, isn't there? I sometimes think of because there's so much information coming at us and there's so much availability of
Hmm.
information, that perhaps the things like imagination, perhaps curiosity in some ways is reduced
Yeah.
because it's all there. But on the other hand, this is where I think there are so many more sort of paradoxes in the world that because that extra information is there, that can spark ideas
Hmm.
that you perhaps, pre-internet world that you perhaps wouldn't get, that your imagination wouldn't allow you to get. So I don't know, but it, it's a wonderful thing to have, and like you say, where you can create those imaginative realities.
Hmm.
I just think so much can come out of that if we can allow our minds to do that, and also have the time to do it as well.
Yes, for sure. And to be honest, that was my obsession when I was at university.
Mm,
That's really what I was thinking about all the time. And I always tell people I'm not really a movie person, and people get
mm,
really like confused about that. And I'm like, I feel like movies have done the imagining for me.
yeah,
If I were to read the script, I might enjoy it way more. Just
yeah,
because I am directing it, I am visualizing it, I am
yeah.
writing the music for it, I am casting for it. Like I get to do all the other things. So
Mm,
that's why I loved studying literature, because for me, what is exciting is not necessarily the plot, but it's the language and how people use it to convey
yeah,
or
mm,
develop. And for me, when I think about music as a medium, it is a combination of all these things, right? I am giving
mm,
you visuals, I'm giving you live performance, I'm giving you stories, I'm giving you lyrics, and I'm giving you production and melody and
yeah,
tone and delivery, right? I get to I get to be kind of like the puppet master behind all these things.
yeah,
And so that's why I find it such a fun medium to write in,
yeah,
because I get to do all of the bits that a movie does, but I get to do it within a song.
yeah,
Which is why I understand why filmmakers have such a good time putting together movies. And I think it's very impressive for them to put together something so long and be so articulate.
mm,
For me, it's like I'm gonna focus on 3 minutes and 30 seconds of this, and really do it well and like refine it and edit it down to where I can really give that full experience. But I think imagination for me comes from solitude,
mm,
and I actually wrote my dissertation on artistic solitude, specifically within
right,
literature.
interesting.
And I focused on Virginia Woolf's practice
Mm,
and Rainer Maria Rilke's practice. And although they were writing in different areas, they had crossovers, and I really wanted to explore, two artists who really inspired me and how they portrayed themselves as artists, and also how
mm,
they wrote their actual art that I enjoy. And so I find solitude very, very, very hard to practice in the modern day. I'm
mm,
so busy answering emails and calls and meeting people and networking and making sure I can pay my
yeah,
rent. Sometimes I'm like, when do I sit down and have this ivory tower experience of just like sitting on top of this tower and being like, I'm just gonna write music and read books? Like that almost seems
yes,
so far
far
removed,
away.
but it's so important to the process for me. So it's
Do
been
you
an
get time?
interesting.
Do you get time for solitude, and does it mean quite a lot to you?
It means a lot because it's really hard to finance solitude.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it
I
is.
honestly, if I didn't get some of the kind of job opportunities I have in the last few years, I wouldn't have been able to write this EP, to be completely honest.
Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't have
yeah,
been able to spend months sitting in someone else's room just
mm.
thinking and writing songs instead of going out and doing jobs, working, modeling, doing all these
So
other
hard,
things.
isn't
So,
it? Yeah,
yeah, so to me, like, it is a very, very sacred time,
yeah,
and one that I'm willing to sacrifice for.
mm,
And, you know, so yes, like, I do make time for it. It's
yeah.
difficult, but it's like my number one priority is to make time to be able to engage in artistic solitude for sure.
And I mean, it is. I agree with you. I
Mm,
find it one of the hardest things to do, but I value it a lot
mm,
myself as well. I'm not as busy as you are, but I still value it, and because essentially, I'm an introvert, and
mm,
so I value that sort of solitude, and be able to sort of spend time, uh, not necessarily alone, but quiet.
mhm.
Just sort of having that quiet time where but it's hard to disengage from interruptions and
Yes, absolutely. And
stuff. But so I have to be really conscious when I'm trying
mhm.
to do it.
And the interruption can come from yourself as well. It's not like
Yeah.
you're prone. It's only external things like the way Rainer Maria Rilke describes his artistic solitude is in a way as simple as, you know, locking your door,
Mm,
like putting down the blinds and sitting with your pen and paper. But
yeah,
at the same time, he was plagued with illness, with depression, with loneliness, with
yeah,
financial issues. Like, you know, that that still happens. Whereas when we compare to Virginia Woolf, you know, she's much more middle class,
yeah,
and she also, you know, she gets to think about solitude a step further.
mm.
And if this is not as interesting for the music side, feel free to cut it out. But like
No, no,
she,
no,
you
not
know,
at all. No, it's interesting.
when she writes A Room of One's Own, which is, you know, this essay about women creating literature and having time and privilege and space to write, she gets to think about those things. Whereas I think in a way, Raina Rilke was like, I'm just trying to like eat tonight
Yeah,
and be able to
yeah,
still write a poem. But I think, you know, all those things are important. You know, for me to have a room of my own, to be able to write as, you know, a queer person who, you know, when I first moved to London, I was couch surfing. You know, I didn't have
mm,
accommodation.
yeah,
I had 100 pounds when I moved here. I didn't know anyone.
mm,
Like those are the things that people don't often think about, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so to have all those things happen in your life, and then you want a room that's got, you know, enough amenities for you to exist in and write. That's an absolute privilege. So
mm,
I find making music still today such a sacred thing, and I often wonder, and I often do say out loud, like, I wish I could just write music full time and not have to worry about anything else, which sounds kind of
yeah,
spoiled, but it is a dream that I would love to
yeah,
have one day where I can have the privilege of sitting and be like, yeah, I'm going to spend 12 hours today not looking at my phone and just writing songs. Like
yeah.
that is a completely different a world of being an artist for sure.
I just sort of have this theory that all of the ills and travails in life, all roads lead to capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Absolutely.
just with everything, whether you know, for all the um intolerance, all the negative stuff around it, you know,
Yeah.
that this is what it has created. You know, the fact that kind of creating art, that there's something at the back of your mind that this needs to, in some way, perhaps at some stage, needs to fund, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a lifestyle, whatever that lifestyle looks like.
Absolutely. And I think it leads to, and I don't know if other songwriters or artists listening to this, I think it leads to this feeling of shame and guilt.
Mm,
Because often I think to myself, wow, like, shouldn't at this point in my life, shouldn't I not have written hundreds and hundreds of incredible songs and put them out? Like,
mm,
am I
yeah,
not a true artist if I don't spend all of my time writing music? And obviously, like, with everything we've just said, it's not possible to just do that, right?
yeah, yeah.
But I think artistically, a lot of people feel like they're not hitting their artistic potentials or investing enough time into the passion that's calling them to write
Mm,
because of capitalism and the way we live
yeah,
in society. So I often try to tell myself not to feel bad about it because
yeah,
yes, I'm not churning out a new single every month because I can't afford it, and that's okay.
yeah,
And I've got to like accept these things sometimes and be like, as long as I believe in the quality of my music and I am enjoying the process, which I find very hard to do,
mm.
I am doing what I want to do. So
I guess there's also the feelings of maybe competition isn't the right word, but what other people are doing, you know,
keeping up is how I
keeping
see
up,
it.
and
Yeah.
you know, you look at somebody else, and they may have nothing to do with your life, nothing to you know, absolutely nothing in common with your life.
Yeah.
And they may be at a completely different stage, but they may be doing things, and you're at a time when you need your kind of downtime.
Hmm.
It's hard sometimes to disengage from that and not be sort of like looking to the side and thinking, they're doing that. Maybe I should be.
For
It's a
sure.
horrible feeling. This that, like you say, like you mentioned the word guilt. You know, that you're
Yeah.
not doing something. This world today makes it really hard not to feel that.
Yes. And, you know, the other two feelings that come with that is envy and jealousy, right? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it is hard
yeah,
for me to be like, oh, well, obviously they could do that because they've got this. But then
yeah.
I need to shut that down so quickly
Yes,
because
yeah,
because I am already harsh enough with myself comparing myself to myself.
Yeah.
But I also take a lot of joy in comparing myself to myself. It gives me a lot of
Mm,
comfort because I remember moments where, when I had my first song out, I put Just Like Go for Once out in 2018.
yeah.
And I remember thinking, it would be great if I had even one gig where I could sing this to 10 people.
Yeah.
And like, I have to remember moments like that where I have fought for more ways to express my music. And
Yeah.
I must remember that, there were times where I wish I could sit here and be talking about my artistic process with
Yes.
someone. Like, oh,
Absolutely.
this for me is an incredible conversation to have anyway. Like, because I feel
Mm,
like in the last year, people care more about my image
yeah.
than the artistry behind the
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah.
And so like I have to remember and remind myself that it's probably comforting to compare myself to myself, but it is quite damaging to compare myself with someone else's journey because it's just a
Yeah.
completely different thing. But I will say the queer music scene that I've experienced in London has been really nice.
Brilliant.
And I've felt
Yeah.
very supported by
Yeah.
other artists who are on the same or at different levels.
Mm,
And I truly don't feel competitive
yeah.
with those people,
Um,
which is quite a relief.
it's a relief, and I think it's an important thing to have, isn't it? To have
Yes,
that feeling that you have that community that
absolutely.
again, going back to that community that you can trust,
Hmm.
and and that gives you strength. It gives you, um, sort of feelings of protection, of feeling more invincible. That sounds like you're a kind of warlord or something, but do you know what I mean? It's like a
Yeah,
strength. It's a strength,
it it
in what you're doing.
it gives me a bit of security in just knowing that
Mm,
all I can be is myself. I
yeah,
know that sounds so cheesy, but at the end of the day, like it's true. Like
it's
there's
very
no
true.
point in me
Yeah,
trying to be anything else apart from what I'm doing now. The only thing I can do is make sure that I'm happy with who I
yeah,
am and the songs I'm putting out and the way I communicate with people. And whatever comes from that will come from that. Even like, I'm sure other artists have talked about this, but like there's such a pressure to be a content creator and be on social media and be
yeah,
churning out TikToks and go viral. And I have found like a good balance where I'm like, I will do as much as I want to, and I will not do the bits I don't want to do. And that'll be okay. And if that's as far as my music takes me, that as far as it'll take me. And I am okay with that because I'm in a way unwilling to do things that make me deeply unhappy for the
yeah,
sake of my music doing well or better, because it actually might not give me the satisfaction that I want. So, and to be honest, I think making music for me is never, it's hard to say, but like it's not about being popular, even though it is about being popular because you need it to be popular to make money off of it. But
yeah, yeah,
my interest in music is to be popular enough that I can be an artist that releases music that people want to listen to and they have a conversation with me about it. And
yeah,
that conversation could be in the form of a live performance, a podcast, an interview, someone listening to a song and saying how they felt about it. Because that has always been the core feeling that's fueled me wanting to perform to anyone, is someone being like, I experienced something similar or I experienced something completely different and they tell me their stories. Like for me, it's a sharing medium. And so we'll see where things take me, but that is the thing I never want to lose. Because I've seen like you've seen major artists like someone like Miley Cyrus who's like I never want to do a huge arena tour again because I don't connect with anyone,
yeah,
and I can see her frustration and like I want to connect with the audience I'm singing these songs I wrote to, and so I want to make
yeah.
sure that that's something that is still
Ag-
core to why I do it. Yeah,
Again, I honestly, I'm going to sound like a broken record. It comes. I mean, yes, there's the ego, there's the popularity, but there's also this obsession that we have around capitalism and growth.
yeah,
It's like the industry wants growth, and it sees
yeah,
because there's money in it, and
yes,
somebody like Miley that's saying, okay, well. I need to find a way that I need to connect
Hmm.
with the people that want to come to see me. You can't
Yeah,
do that. It's those sort of huge things. Of course, sure, they're great things to be at. Must be an amazing
yeah,
feeling. But when it comes down to it, what are you getting from it? What is it that you want? And I think it's yes, and I think you've really identified that what it is that you want and what you don't want to lose sight of.
absolutely. Because I think about it the other way of like, I am a fan, right? Like,
Yeah,
I am a music
that's the
fan.
point. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I know, like, it's almost like I'm writing music in response to all of the music I've heard,
mm, mm,
uh,
yeah,
I've ever heard, right? Like, and I want that to be a conversation, right?
yeah,
So if it ever feels like I'm making, well, at least like if I'm performing music to people and I am releasing music, I do want there to be a connection. If not, I don't have to release it. I love like playing my own songs on piano when I come
yeah,
home. Like it's fine. I could just do that, right? I could easily just do that and play it to myself. I would still love what I make, right?
yeah,
But if I am putting it out, I do want it to have a connection with someone.
yeah,
Um, but then, as this EP's come out, my team's grown, which is amazing.
yeah,
Like I have a label, I have a manager, I have distribution, I have PR. Like
yeah,
it's very different to me putting music out before. And I'm starting to realize, okay, well, now my success also is connected to other people's successes.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's my first time experiencing that wider thing. And
yeah,
also, so my producer and my co-songwriter, Michelangelo,
yeah,
we we all do this together. We're all putting our eggs in this basket and devoting our time to Deja Vu the EP, right? And I want to make sure that it, in a capitalist and artistic sense, do well for
do well.
everyone's sake. And this is such a small fish compared to like the Miley Cyruses of the world, right? So I can't imagine what someone like that has to go through to think about the huge pyramid industry that is supporting
Yeah,
that
yeah,
artist. But I will say I'm loving exploring this world for the first time.
it's
So
amazing.
yeah.
Jason, thanks so much. It's been amazing talking to you. It's been a really,
Thank you
really
so
great chat.
much.
I've loved every minute of it. It's been really great, and I'm so pleased that things are working out, and you're getting some these amazing opportunities now.
Thank you so much.
Terrific.
And yeah, I really appreciate you telling me about the process and the feelings behind all jobs because that is, I think, often overlooked. And I do really hope everyone listening to the podcast will give my music a go, and see if you connect with it in your own ways.
Yeah,
And if you are available or going to any prides this in the UK, I'm doing a pride tour. So come out and see me. And I'm doing a few shows in London as well. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
amazing.